my thoughts on the GymCan harassment officer of 30 years who handled my Safe Sport case, being the first speaker in the Winning Well series hosted by GymCan tonight. I have been going through a Safe Sport process as a complainant for 5 years. In December, I followed up with my case with GymCan, asking them simply if my case was considered open or closed. I got 2 emails back saying that they would get back to me, and as of today, January 16th, I still don't have that answer. My complaint culminated in a report in March of 2021 that was submitted to GymCan, in which me and 4 others all came forward independently about the bad things that happened to us by this national team therapist. When I posted in July of 2021 publicly about my experiences in gymnastics, I got a call 2 days later from the harassment officer, the one that handled my case, saying that if I was careful with what I posted, she would make sure that both she and I were happy with the outcome of the investigation. The harassment officer is the person who did the investigation and also submitted this report that March. In March of 2023, I testified publicly at a parliamentary committee, the Heritage Committee, that oversees sport in Canada, that this call from the harassment officer sent me into a major mental health spiral. This harassment officer also testified at that committee as an expert, and she was questioned on her conflicts of interest, that she was a harassment officer at GymCan for over 30 years, where there were decades and decades of toxic culture and abusive practices that were obviously not flagged or dealt with, and that she received millions of dollars in funding to research Safe Sport. Yesterday, I was a little surprised when I received an email inviting me to this new series hosted by GymCan on Safe Sport, in which the harassment officer and the person who handled my case is the first speaker. Since I put in my complaint 5 years ago, GymCan has had a new president, a new Safe Sport director, and almost an entirely new board. And the current GymCan president testified at the same committee that I testified at. So to me, it shows it doesn't matter who's in these positions, the same cultural problems are still there. Safe Sport in Canada, particularly the gymnastics community, is in a crisis right now of mishandled complaints, toxic behaviors, and abusive practices. In what world is the person who had a hand in most, if not all, Safe Sport complaints for the past 30 years in gymnastics in Canada being asked to present on Safe Sport to our community? This culture is perpetuated by people who enabled, saw these things, and did nothing for more than the last 30 years. There are countless people to choose from for this new series, yet they choose her. This choice feels particularly pointed and cruel given the public testimony about her in our particular sport. She has had over 30 years to make a positive contribution to gymnastics in this country, and yet here we are. A culture in which I can't even get an answer in my own case that she handled if it's open or closed. But somehow tonight she now has a positive contribution to make to the sport of gymnastics in this country. She's had 30 years. The irony of this timing is that Liz Brubaker's ban is also up this week. If you don't know who that is, you should look her up. We often talk about changing the culture, big shifts we can make, and how to protect the next generation. How can we remotely even start to have this conversation when abusers and enablers are given a platform, are promoted, and are still being dolled around by the organization that was put in place to protect us? Right now, as proven by tonight, in this series, we cannot even do the bare minimum.